Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point, AFR Talk. Brian Fisher is my name. The program is Focal Point. The network is the American Family Radio Talk Network. This is AFR Talk, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio. Now, you may have heard a momentous decision, really an alarming decision, a sobering decision, one that ought to be of deep concern to everybody that cares about the family, cares about the institution of marriage. A federal judge in Utah on Friday issued a ruling that essentially struck down the state's polygamy law. Now, technically, he didn't do it, but he gutted the thing. He eviscerated it. He said nobody anymore can be punished for violating the state's polygamy law. So he's essentially legalized it. He's essentially normalized it, saying polygamy now is just as normal and just as legal as same-sex marriage. Now, technically, people will say, well, no, he really didn't do it. But I'm telling you, the polygamy out there community, the pro-polygamy community is out there celebrating this thing as the 4th of July. The attorney that fought the case for the plaintiffs, for the polygamists that wanted legal protection for their lifestyle, and the plaintiffs were stars. The guy's name is Cody Brown. He has 4, quote, wives, end quote. I don't call them wives. You put scare quotes around them because they're not wives. It's a counterfeit deal. And on this television show, it's on the TLC network, and it's called Sister Wives. They've been on for 3 or 4 years, so they have been not only breaking the law about polygamy, but they have been flaunting this before the eyes of the world, and they've been making bank off of this thing. They've been making money off of basically being marital outlaws, and they're like the Bonnie and Clyde of polygamy. That's what these people are. They're like the Bonnie and Clyde of polygamy. They are flaunting the law. They're breaking the law. They're celebrating it. They're sticking it right in our faces. And now they've got a federal judge to go along with them and say, yeah, I'm going to agree with you. Polygamy is just fine. You can't make it against the law. So he decriminalized polygamy. And the essence of it, no matter what you read about the technical legal ins and outs, and I understand there's debate about that, and that's fine. But the reality is this judge legalized polygamy. Now, we're going to play a soundbite here, just kind of a news story about what happened here. But here's something, and I'm going to dig into a little bit more detail when we come back after this soundbite that Jeff's going to play for you. It is simply impossible. It is impossible. I repeat, it is impossible for there to be a constitutional right to polygamy, which this judge says there is, and I'll tell you why. Polygamy was illegal everywhere, I mean everywhere in the United States when the Constitution was enacted, when the Constitution was adopted. A constitution was adopted protecting all of these rights at the very same time that polygamy was forbidden in public policy in every single solitary square inch of the United States of America. It is historically impossible for there to be any constitutional right to polygamy. The only way you can find a right to polygamy in the Constitution is make it up out of your own fevered brain, which is what this district court judge did. Now, what's alarming about this, people say, well, this is just Utah. It only applies in his jurisdiction. Here's the problem. This is exactly how California's Proposition 8, the amendment to the state constitution that defined marriage as the union of one man and one woman, this is exactly how the overturning of that law in the state of California, that constitutional amendment, that's how it started, by one rogue, renegade, district judge imposing his own moral will, his own moral views over the will of the people of California. I mean, 7 to 8 million Californians went to the polls and they voted. They said it is the will of the people of California that marriage be reserved exclusively for the union of one man and one woman. And this one renegade judge, this Walker in California, he overturned all that, overturned it, and eventually it was upheld by the United States Supreme Court. So that's where these radical redefinitions of marriage start. They start with one black-robed tyrant, black-robed, unaccountable tyrant who imposes his own moral will on the people in his jurisdiction. And remember, these are always the people that are telling us you can't legislate morality. You can't impose your views on anyone else. Well, he just imposed his views on the Utah legislature and everybody that lives in his district. So it's not an incidental thing. You can't say, well, this just has to do with Utah and we're going to contain it there. It didn't happen in California. It's not going to happen in Utah. And this confirms what we said. We have said from the very beginning of this debate, once you cross the threshold of man-woman marriage. In other words, once you cross that boundary line where marriage is no longer restricted to one man and one woman, once you break that threshold, then there is no logical place to stop. There simply is no logical place to stop. I mean, if marriage can involve more than one man, if it can involve two men, if it can involve more than one woman, it can involve two women, then why in the world cannot marriage involve two men and one woman, or two women and one man? I mean, there is no logic. There is no logical place to stop this descent into complete moral chaos and moral anarchy, and that's what we are going to see here with this ruling. So again, I remind you, it is not possible. It is simply historically impossible, legally impossible, constitutionally impossible for there to be a right to polygamy in the Constitution, because polygamy was illegal, flatly prohibited. In fact, ladies and gentlemen, it was a crime that was punishable by death in every state in the Union when the Constitution was enacted. I repeat, polygamy was a capital crime everywhere in the United States when the Constitution was enacted. There was absolutely no intent, no possibility that the founders were trying to protect the practice of polygamy anywhere in the United States of America. So this thing is just a logical, historical, legal, and constitutional absurdity. But there it is. You know, he is appointed for life. Now, to me, this is an absolutely impeachable offense. Remember that the Constitution provides that federal judges, they serve during good behavior. They don't serve for life. A lot of people have the mistaken notion that these federal judges serve for life. They do not. They serve, according to the Constitution, during good behavior. This is bad behavior. It is bad behavior. It is very bad behavior. It is very, very, very bad behavior, because this guy is granting a constitutional right to something that was prohibited everywhere in the United States when the Constitution was enacted. Well, let's grab, I just asked Jeff to find a kind of a summary of a news bite that talks, and you'll get the kind of the tilt of the mainstream media here in favor of this radical, renegade, rogue, off-the-reservation ruling. Let's listen.
A federal judge ruling that Utah's polygamy law is unconstitutional.
The case was filed by the Brown family, featured in the reality show Sister Wives. Cody Brown left the state with his 4 wives, worried that he would face criminal prosecution.
Yeah, Heidi Hatch joining us live with more on this ruling. This could have some big implications, Heidi.
This really could have big implications for a lot of families living here in Utah. This ruling essentially decriminalizes polygamy, from my understanding of what I've been able to read so far. This will not legalize it, so you can't go in and get multiple marriage licenses for the state. This would, however, make it so they couldn't criminally prosecute you for living with multiple wives here in the state of Utah. This is a case that Brown family that has that TLC show has been working on for years. As you mentioned, they had to move out of the state. They are living now with their many children in Las Vegas. They felt like they could go down there and live a little more freely and openly, not worrying about any kind of prosecution. Now, the attorney that worked on this case tonight is saying that with this decision, abuse of spouses and children will continue to be prosecuted regardless of whether they occur in a monogamous or a polygamous family. Their protective services will only be strengthened now that many families can openly integrate into society and not fear prosecution merely because of their family structure. We did contact the AG's office tonight to see if they had any reaction to this new ruling. They said that this is a large ruling. They do need to go over it. They don't know if they will appeal it just yet. But many of these families, the Browns and also the Doggers who we met with, say this is a huge step for them. They say it is not the end. They would eventually like to see it legalized in the state, but decriminalizing it will make it so their kids can go to school feeling safe, they can go to work, they can go about their lives, not always worrying that something could happen to split up their families.
So there you have it. And, you start thinking about the legal status of these plural marriages. Now, Utah still does not legally provide for multiple marriages. Court is just saying you can't punish anybody who presents himself. So you can present yourself now as married to as many people as you want in Utah. You can openly live that way. You can openly introduce these people as your wives, because what the Utah law prohibited was somebody purporting to be married to more than one person, and the judge struck that part of the law down. So you can purport to be as married to as many people as you want. You can have your whole fraternity can purport to be married to each other, and an entire fraternity now can purport to be married to a sorority, one big, giant, happy conjugal family, all in marital bliss. All of that now is permissible. And you know what happened, and I saw this in Idaho. It's interesting to me that the response of the LDS Church, because remember, I suggested a long time ago that one of the reasons that the LDS Church has gone virtually inert and silent on the issue of protecting marriage. Remember, they led the charge on Prop 8. Prop 8 would not have passed in California in 2008 if it were not for the Mormon Church, for the LDS Church. They led the charge, and they paid a price for that, vandalism of their church temples and hatred in the public square and all that. Well, in the last several years, they've gone completely the other direction. They supported this move that the Boy Scouts made to allow homosexuals in scouting. They have not fought to protect any marriage law that's been under attack in the last several years. They've gone completely quiet. They've now come out very gay-friendly. Got Steve Young, the Hall of Fame quarterback from the 49ers, out there hacking and flacking for pro-gay LDS policies. And I suggested at the time that the reason that the LDS Church had gone quiet on this is possibly, I don't know this, I was just an educated guess. So again, I'm not asserting that this is the case, but it struck me as something that would be likely to occur to them, to the leadership of the LDS Church. Look, if we just go silent, the courts are going to legalize polygamy, and this will vindicate the Mormon Church. The Mormon Church will be vindicated. Everybody in the world will see that we were right to believe that plural marriage is a divine sacrament, something that God has commanded us to do. We will finally be vindicated in our belief in polygamy. You know, and I saw this in Idaho, where you had these pseudo-polygamous marriages where they couldn't be legally married to more than one person, but they would have this little commune of a man and multiple wives living in separate dwellings, and he would have one wife who would be his legal wife, but the other wives in these polygamous communities, they were treated by the law as single mothers because they weren't married. And so they would go and apply for all of these benefits, all of these welfare benefits, on the grounds that they were single mothers who did not have a husband in the home to provide for them. And so they were virtually carried, sustained, provided for by the welfare state. And we'll have Muslims immigrating with their entire pack of wives, and President Obama will let them in. Focal Point, AFR Talk.